Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dmitry Kirchev, and I would like to welcome you to the 10th episode of Trading Patterns. With me is Mr. Nikolai Stoykov.
Hello, Mr. Kitchev, and hello to our lovely audience.
All right, so the 10th episode. You mentioned you want to discuss something important.
Something important.
Yeah, something important. That before you become a successful trader, you need to be an adult first.
Yes. I think that there is a story, and it seems like trading is very difficult. Don't you agree, Mr. Kirchev?
Some people say it's difficult. Some people that get lucky say it's not that difficult.
It's difficult. It's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, and kind of like the disappointments or the false hopes. Very kind of close companion for most traders. Yes. So we had difficulty kind of naming the episode, and I'll tell you why. Because it's such a big change from everything you've heard. So it's like what I've heard. I'll tell you how I slowly grabbed into it. The examples that I actually offer people and tell them, hey, this is why trading is difficult. And one of the examples I offered to Mr. Kirchev when he was here was 5, 10, and 20. And Mr. Kirchev, what do you think the fourth kind of
40.
40. What's the probability of you being correct?
Pretty high.
Pretty high. Like 110% high?
I would say north of 80%.
Right. And the important thing here is I've asked this question individually to over 200 people. And I'm pretty sure what most people would say. If you have three digits, three numbers, 5, 10, and 20, most people would guess that the fourth number is 40. And that would be a good guess in terms of Occam's razor, kind of like the simplest explanation is the most likely one. But unfortunately, theoretically speaking, 40 has a 0% chance of happening. I mean, there is so many other combinations that happen. Could happen 105, 110, 120. Could be 1005, 1010, 1020, and so forth. So there's multiple correlations or multiple things that could happen. And this is a common pattern. This is where trading actually is what they call some sort of like a second level thinking. So in the sense that trading is hard because it makes sense, but it doesn't feel comfortable. If something makes sense and feels comfortable, you're either not going to make any money, you're going to lose all your money, or you're going to make a little bit.
But wait, hold on. For example, you know how a surgeon, after 40 years of experience, he has the precision. He can. We could practically say that he has the industry experience, and he's pretty comfortable holding the scalpel and everything,
yes.
Right? So isn't that the same with the trader?
No.
Does he need to always be uncomfortable?
Yes.
So he doesn't get the industry experience to be comfortable placing a trade after 20 years.
Yes. To a degree, the most kind of like the closest thing is that maybe some sort of a sportsman, in the sense that think about it this way: a successful surgeon does operations that could be very difficult or could be routine. He just has some sort of established practice, and people come back, and it doesn't need to be life and death event. To a degree in trading, it's virtually the winner takes all kind of thing. So you need to be on top of your game. There's nothing routine about trading. I mean, there are kind of situations that are a little bit more obvious or more comfortable than the others, but they share one particular thing: they're uncomfortable at some point. So yes, if something makes sense and it makes you feel comfortable, that's probably not going to make you any money. You could feel comfortable, but that would be a peak of amount of stupid. So the natural state and the true state should be some degree of comfortableness, not a awfully painful degree of pain, but some degree of uncomfortableness is usual companion. If you don't get to feel that doubt, if doubt never comes into your mind that you're right, you're probably too optimistic, and that's my experience.
Okay, back to the 5, 10, 10,
10,
20
50. Yes, 5,
question. What was the most interesting answer you received so far?
Most of the interesting answers are kind of stupid. People will say like 30 or something like that. That kind of threw me off. Where did you get 30 from? It's like I've gotten the original pattern I got from banknotes. It seems like in most countries they have like 5, 10, 20, 50 kind of banknotes, and so it was in my wallet one day. I was like, 5, 10, 20, and then 50. And I used it in some sort of a lecture I was giving at one of the university. And of course, everybody said 40. So the standard answer is 40 with 0%, with 50% chance of being right. But in reality, is most people are going to bet half their money on that. And when 40 doesn't come, they're going to be really disappointed. And they say something like, Nikolai, trading doesn't make sense. It makes sense. It's just when you feel comfortable, you're basically limiting your analytics on the problem.
Overconfidence.
Overconfidence, yes, overconfidence. But this is not what trading is. Actually very difficult. And the trading is very difficult because it's really given by one particular example, particular boy and a girl. And do you know the name Christian Obumseli, Mr. Kirchev?
I became familiar very recently.
Do you want to tell our audience about who Christian Obumseli is? Because he's very close to your age, right?
Right, he was.
Yes.
I think I can be too explicit.
All right.
So maybe you should.
All right, I'll tell it. Christian Obumseli, 27-year-old black man from Houston. I guess he has a college degree. He had a college degree, and I guess he was a sports star, some sort of in high school, played football and so forth.
Buffed up guy.
Strong. Like, for American standards, he's not really buffed up, but not a pushover. Christian Obumseli, as I said, is a black young man from Houston, and meets like a blonde girl, very attractive blonde. Did you like her, Mr. Kirchev? Blonde girl from Dallas.
Are we just gonna talk about her hair color?
Yes. Yes, I mean, yes. She's about 2 years. 2 years younger than him, around 25. And I guess they meet in a random, like, or some sort of and they didn't meet for friends or something like that. They met, I guess, some night when they go both out. This is not very unusual.
Wasn't it a strip club?
We don't really know, to be honest. Or at least I don't remember. Was it?
I think it was something like a strip club.
All right, great. Yes. But let's we don't know exactly how they met. So they basically turns out that that girl, I think her name was Christy, basically makes a lot of money. She was a Instagram star.
OnlyFans model.
I guess she didn't tell him right away, but she was also OnlyFans, star. And the year that she met him, she made $1.8 million. What do you say about that, Mr. Kirchev?
I wish I was a woman.
But wouldn't it be nice not to pay for women too much?
Of course. But
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but I guess things comes with strings attached. So if she's making too much money, it comes from OnlyFans. Anyway, Christian moved to Miami and take a flat together when the lease is in her name. And this is all publicly available information. When we're not trying to judge or excessively kind of like, provide you with too much guessing. But what is known about their relationship in Miami is that 6 times during the 2-month period that they lived in Miami, police was called to the apartment for domestic
violence,
domestic disturbance. We don't know if it's violence.
Okay.
Domestic disturbance.
I mean, based on the outcome of the story, it's pretty violent.
Okay.
But okay, so far the story goes.
Yes,
as
and on day 45, Christy stabs Christian, and on day 46, he writes her a love novel and a love note, and he basically says that their love for each other could cure it all.
She stabs him. He recovers and writes a love note.
Yes. He doesn't even recover. He writes it the next day. He hasn't recovered. He's still like...
I mean, he wasn't dead at the time.
Yes, that's right. But the wound is still there. He's talking about stitches and stuff like that.
Okay.
And on day 60, she stabs him. We don't know what causes the stabbing and all this stuff. But in reality, what I've realized is that people are incapable of making rational decisions once they get involved in something very easily, right? So if you ask most people and they tell you, hey, this is the course of the relationship, what would you do if this thing happens? Most people would say, I would get out, right, Mr. Kirchhoff?
Of course. That's the rational thing to do.
That's the rational thing to do. But in reality, people don't get out.
I wouldn't get out.
just looking at her, my experience tells me that I don't get out. So it's like, if you tell me all the things that could happen afterwards, I would be like, what this guy is doing. But in reality, before those bad things happen, it was probably like quite a bit good things happen. So
just a side note, Mr. Stoykov at the end said that she stabbed him, but I guess we need to clear this up.
He died.
Yeah. She killed him. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
He's dead.
So you look and people always ask me, it's like, that's like a sad story, or like, what does it mean in trading? And I tell you what it means in trading. It's like, and this is like a real example. We have like a client, and that's long a stock that goes down 25% every year. So there's basically like some sort of a theoretical reason, some sort of ETF that trades too much, and once in a while there is like 6 months or a year performance where the stock doesn't really go down that much, but on average he's gone down. And one day he told me that he's long it, and I said, why? I said, well, because it's down so much, it's bound to bounce. And the reality is, like, isn't it like so much easier to be short that stock? Why do you need to be long? In the sense that, like, if you're pissing against the wind, isn't it like,
easier to turn?
Yeah, it shouldn't come as a surprise that you get wet. Like, shouldn't you piss with the wind? I mean, like, go with the flow. And it's like, when people tell them about this in terms of like the stock, like, look, you have a stock that continues to go down.
But maybe by him entering the stock, it's going to change.
No. The reality of what happens is most people do say that I'm long the stock for a little bit. And hey, it's going to balance and I'm going to kind of like sell it higher. In reality, what occurs is there's a contradiction inside of us. Hey, this stock, I know it's going down. And if I don't get out within, I don't know, several months, obviously I'm beyond the water, but I'm going to get lucky, or like, I'm going to devise a system that could kind of compensate for this wind and go up and kind of get a profit. And this thing is confirmed by some previous positive experience. And it turns out that this is a flaw with like most human beings and most actually forms of life that are actually intelligence, we cannot discern a pattern, the direction of the pattern, if there's contradictory information. So if there is good and bad, that are kind of like strongly emotionally like events, people basically could be wrong or could misremember. And what they say, a frog, if you put it in boiling water, would just jump off. But if you put it in water and just slowly heat it up, you could boil it up. So that's the kind of like the essence of the Christian Womsili story and his girlfriend. And this is the problem with most human beings and most people that decide to trade. And all the cures, all the kind of like lessons or kind of tricks or kind of point of views boil down to this, that people have this kind of flaw, a perceptional flaw, where if you sprinkle good and bad, it's not just good and there's some bad, they actually can't make a rational decision. And all kind of cases of addiction start from that. Like people, before they get addicted, they actually have some sort of relatively positive experience and they're chasing the previous high, but it gets worse and worse and the highs gets worse. But people are incapable of stopping just because they had a positive experience. Trading is very addictive, and
isn't that what typical gamblers?
Yes.
Sticking to the one time
That's right. Trading is very addictive, and people don't understand that kind of like, there are few defenses once this thing is actually popped up. But the most important thing, and I don't know which way do you want me to go, Mr. Kirchhoff? Do you want me to add the examples for like the boy and girl kind of situation? Or?
Yeah, I just want our listeners are gonna ask themselves, how can one not be Christian Obomseli? How can one mitigate the effects?
Right. As I said, I've been kind of mentoring traders for the last maybe 8 years, and average age is 20, so we have plenty of examples. I don't need to think them up. So first one to start is like, obviously men and women are not good friends. Isn't that obvious by the very fact that kind of like if you're a young person and you're like trading, your mother and her friends don't have any guy friends outside your father or outside their husband. So we don't see a lot of lasting men and women relationship. And to a degree, there is basically maybe it takes a little bit for young men to realize that, hey, if I'm very good friends with a woman, she's just not interested in me. So it seems very strange, but if you're very close friend to a woman, you'll never be promoted to a boyfriend. So if you're good friends, you'll never be promoted to best friends.
Yeah.
So this is kind of taken. Most people are done with that. The reality of it is that there's variations of that, and the devil is in the details. In real case, a trader meets like a girl on the subway that he hasn't met in a while. Not that while, but a little bit, maybe like a year. She looks good. She's flirting with him and kind of laughing. And before she goes off, she asks him to go for a coffee. Hey, why don't you call me for a coffee? What do you think, Mr. Kirchhoff? What is going to happen?
I have some sort of experience.
You do? Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, implying that they haven't seen each other in a while, if she asks him for a coffee, then she probably wants to hook up with him.
Wow.
That would be my guess.
Right. The important thing is like...
Aren't you going to ask? Aren't you going to ask what happened from my experience? She didn't want to hook up.
Right. The important thing is like young men don't understand that they're like internet resources, and you can ask on internet, and usually Quora provides like a good answer to that. And if you ask like, what does a girl want when she invites me for a coffee?
She just wants a coffee.
You see like the answer that selected most likes. You just have to go and find out. It could mean anything. Right. From a guy's perspective, like the only time you would invite a girl for a coffee is if you're interested in her. But surprisingly, women actually want to make you friends. So we don't know why she did that. Maybe she was just a little bit spontaneous. But yes, like, she didn't really want to hook up. She just wanted to go and get coffee.
Yeah, just have a coffee.
Again, what traders don't realize that there is what I call golden hour, and maybe here in Sofia and in Istanbul, and maybe even in New York, is between 7:30 and 8:30 at night, and that's like kind of like maybe the peak of the probability if a girl is willing to meet you between 7:30 and 8:30 in New York, and I don't know, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's like the peak of the probability. If she wants to meet you at 6 p.m. on Monday, that's not so good. And if she only can spare coffee or lunch on the weekend around 2 o'clock, that's also not so good.
I know that now.
Right. What do we do? What should you do in hindsight, Mr. Kirchev? What would you have advised yourself? Like, what should have you done? Okay, she invited you for coffee. What you should have done?
I don't know. At that time, I was pretty hyped up. So,
but if you have to give an advice to somebody else, okay, she invites you for coffee, and
just don't have unrealistic expectations. Go and find out.
I would cancel, especially if you're actually interested in her. Right. Another case, like a woman wants to meet one of the traders, and they've been friends not for so long, and he's interested in her, but she wants to meet him on Saturday at 6 p.m.
Saturday
at 6 p.m. And it's night. It's winter, so it's kind of darkish.
Yeah, I would say his odds are good.
Yes, odds are not bad. So it's Saturday. It's like, it's 6 p.m. So it's a little bit unusual, but let's wait and see. Maybe there's a reason for that.
I mean, there's practically no difference between 6 and 8 p.m. on a Saturday, is there?
There is.
There is?
There is. There is. I mean, you finish eating by 8. So the reason why she asked him probably is because she
has another one at 8.
She's doing something afterwards. Okay. But she could get him to that potentially. So let's say she's meeting other people afterwards, but potentially could come there. But the telltale here is that she comes from the gym. So there is like, this is what the guy would before a date would do, but to women, look is actually very important, and they portray or kind of like choose the outfits very carefully. So in that particular sense, it's like clearly she's coming from the gym with the gym bag. She doesn't have any makeup, and that's just like no in terms of like, what importance does she put into appearance in front of him. Kind of like a skirt or dress would be nice, or kind of high heel shoes. I guess you could have pants, but the top 2 buttons of the shirt need to be unbuttoned.
Top 2 unbuttoned.
It would be nice if you have like, some sort of earrings. Long earrings would be good and stuff like that. In general, just kind of like, not kind of like, completely kind of waking up on a Saturday, put my sweaters and sneakers on kind of outfit. So anything's better than coming from the gym. Right. Do you agree with this so far?
Yeah, I do agree. It's just, regardless who you ask, everybody's going to get their expectations high to some extent. So are we all doomed?
No, we're not doomed. It's just basically like it's basically having realistic expectations. It's like and women communicate. Women communicate with the choices of the outfit. And that's the important thing. So it's like you're not doomed. You just need to read. in terms of like, hey, like what time she meets you. The most important thing, willingness to meet, and how she dresses. It's kind of like, it's going to save you the relationship. And so in that particular sense, if you try to kiss her on that date, and that's going to be a disaster. You'll be, yeah. And people don't realize that if one of those things go wrong, a trader will be in a tilt and he could lose serious amount of money. So in the sense of like, hey, it's very difficult to kind of understand women, but if you misread the situation, you're bound to be very upset. So this is what kind of like the idea of is. So it's like learning to kind of like what to expect. So of course, like, Saturday 6 p.m. looks promising, but if she's coming from the gym, you should immediately lower your expectations. It's like, of course, this could be a little bit more, but like, it's she's communicating to you, hey, this is kind of like a very casual thing, and the most important thing is keeping the expectations low, but also don't do stupid things. Tendencies for young men to like order a little bit more alcohol and try to kiss the girl when there's obviously or be very disappointed that things didn't happen, and like, keeping your expectations low and immediately kind of realizing what's the most likely scenario is kind of like the idea. But I don't know if we want to go to too much more. Right. The most important thing, I guess, next is kind of like to not rush. So let's say in your new relationship, and I was speaking to one of the traders once, and he's like, hey, how's your new girlfriend going? Has she woken up on a Sunday and said, hey, potentially, I'm not going to use his name, I'm going to use Nikolai, I don't think you love me anymore.
Just like that, waking up.
Just like that. And he said, no, she's not like that.
Yet.
And they said, yet. And all the older traders are laughing. But the reality of it is, like, first 3 months, you're really dating a different person. Everybody's different. So it's like everybody's putting their best face and so forth. So the reality is, first 3 months of a relationship are kind of like, not indicative of what things will be. It's the second 3 months. So it's like the month 4 to 6 that they begin to kind of show. And obviously long distance relationships where people live and rarely see each other, we don't know how to discount them. I guess like the real test of a relationship is living together or living in the same city, at least. So that's when kind of like, month 4 to 6. This is like a very important. This is like even adult people make that mistake. They get married after dating for 3 months. People get kind of I don't know, pregnant or something like that, and and this is a really big risk. And one of the telltale signs that we could go back to a Christian Christie relationship, I believe, is that they met at random. And this is kind of like a very, very dangerous thing to do. And when people kind of give you dating advice and say, like, hey, why don't you go clubs and bars and meet somebody? Of course you could meet somebody. But the odds are this somebody has totally different values than you. You don't have any kind of like, this is like one of the tests that I tell to traders. Like, look, you meet a girl, you lived in Sofia, let's say at least 5 years, and she lives in Sofia at least 5 years, and you're roughly about the same age. How many kind of Facebook friends you have in common? And usually women have more friends than kind of like guys. So let's say she has 1,000 and the guy has 500, and you have 0 friends in common. And that just tells you that, and Sofia is a small city, so it's like it's 1.5 million. This is, people do kind of intermingle. It means that kind of like you don't have the same kind of interests. So if you don't have the same interests, you probably don't have kind of similar values, and that relationship will be purely based on sex and violent kind of quarrels are possible. And this is like the most important lesson from Christian. It's like, they feel each other, but this is kind of like a physical attraction.
Different worlds.
Different worlds. It seems like, that, The fact that they met kind of like at night is one of the indicators that hey, this potentially is like, a very dangerous thing. And even if you know all those things, and people still would kind of be boiled in the frog, right? It would be kind of boiled in water.
Okay, we don't have much time. I have two questions. First is actually from my side.
Uh-huh.
So what you're saying is a person cannot be a successful trader unless he's actually first an adult and goes through all these things. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
To be able to identify the 6 p.m. gym shorts situation, gym bag situation, and all those things that we actually discussed when it comes to identifying situations, relationships with men and women. So unless we are able to come out on top of all this, we are unable to be successful traders. Is that correct? Or?
Yes. What I want to say is that it's not just being adult. It's actually thinking like adult in every particular moment. So in that particular sense, let me give you an example. Let's say you get on the subway and you see like a girl with a short skirt. Do you think to yourself like, Dimitar, wouldn't it be nice if you just lift that skirt up and kind of slap that behind? Do you think about that?
Of course I do.
Right. And do you think that that's childish?
Of course.
Right. So yeah, it's not us not realizing what's the adult thing to do. It's just we kind of choose to think like a child, that we don't actually understand the implications. You know what the implications are? First of all, if you get to kind of like fantasize about that girl, you're going to fantasize about her all day. So what you're going to do fantasizing about this girl all day, you're going to fantasize about a stock going up. So in that particular sense,
fantasizing is going to translate in every aspect of the day.
That's right. So the most important thing is to kind of like stop this kind of like, storytelling fantasies that we keep in our kind of mind. And think of men. I think that we're born with excessive sexuality. It's like, think of us as some sort of guys that are on perpetual diet. And thinking about all the girls in the cars kind of in repetitive manners. It's just like a very kind of multitasking distraction that kind of like, you're always doing something and thinking about something else. And at some point, before we kind of start talking about like all the kind of healthy habits, you need to want to be an adult, to have like realistic expectations. Hey, I don't know what to expect from women, but I want to actually be an adult and understand and find the data and not be kind of like, put in some sort of a fantasy world. It's like, hey, like, the reality is it's all of it is fantasy. I mean, like, there's no particular, like, it's not just that you're fantasizing about the woman, you're fantasizing that she's willing to please you every time, like, to perpetuate. And that there's no woman like that. That's clearly like a fantasy. So in many particular sense, we don't understand the cost, and they're very kind of alluring, and they're actually childish, because we started having those fantasies probably pre-teens, and kind of like men's idea of what women and kind of sex means are really formed there, and that meaning of like, what sex and women can do really stays the same. I mean, you could see it when a woman is like, wearing a short skirt and she's sitting down and tries to get up. There's about 20 guys that are waiting to look at her underwear.
Yeah.
Isn't that childish?
Of course it is.
It's extremely childish. And yes, like if you actually want to be a successful trader, you need to make a determination that you want to be an adult in all the aspects. And like, trying to be a child and then successful trader might be successful theoretically, but I've never seen it consistently kind of successful. I think it's an illusion. And yes, before we speak about the habits, or like the good habits, like one particular error that people say is like work hard and play hard. There's no such thing. There's work hard and play average. If you try to play hard, you're never going to work hard. So yes, And the one like endless kind of stories that they have traders like after successful day, they go clubbing and they made a little bit of money, started hitting on every girl and that was around, and they got into fights. And I'm like, like you realize that if you get lucky in the market, doesn't really mean you're gonna get lucky tonight. And they realize it, but actions say otherwise. That yes, like, you know, people, as soon as they kind of like achieve some sort of a success, they look to play hard, and playing hard it just basically counterweights the work hard. And people think they could kind of balance it, but my experience tells me that they can't. So yes, the adult thing to do is to kind of do average parting and just work hard. And surprisingly, many people, especially after watching Wolf of Wall Street, decide that, hey, this is the business where once I make money, I'm going to have that lifestyle. No, that lifestyle is an illusion. And the people that lead it, who soon are going to be facing the consequences. And isn't it the case that Wolf of Wall Street, the guy went to jail? And it's like, you want to go to jail?
Yeah. All right. Last question from one of our listeners.
Yes.
How much does a stock need to drop percentage-wise, in order for it to be identified as a flat tire?
Right. We know from weekly liquidations is that this is like a rough rule. This is not exclusive, but in general, there are many signs. So this is like, you know, one particular thing may not be enough. But in my experience, if a stock drops more than 70%, it's a prime candidate for over a span of a year. It's a prime candidate to basically call it a flat tire. Certainly, if it drops like more than 90%. Again, this is kind of like a very broad approximation. It's a very important one. But yeah, if something drops like more than 70%, 80, 90, out.
Bitcoin dropped more than 80%.
I certainly not long Bitcoin. In general, high volatility.
All right. Well, no more questions from my side. Would you like to add anything?
Yes. We're going to be talking about habits, and very soon in the next episode. And but I felt that it was necessary to say that all the listening and all the kind of like good ideas that we're going to give you are not going to work unless you actually want to be an adult and kind of like work hard and play average. And this is a very important role, not just play average, and be average in all your endeavors. So in the sense, like, you know, you want to look to be a great trader. Hey, I'm going to be an average brother. I'm going to be an average son. I'll be an average husband. I'll be an average father. And people try to be like, you know, excessively kind of like good at too many things. And it's like, whatever you try to be excessive at, it seems like you only have kind of like one desire. So it's like if you try to be exceptionally good boyfriend, exceptionally good like neighbor, exceptionally good kind of Samaritan, and exceptionally good trader, well, I think you're going to be good at nothing. So yes, you could be good, exceptionally good at only one thing, in my experience, and you need to choose to be prioritizing correctly and choose to be average at the other. And that's a very difficult balance to find, because you don't know what's average and you don't know what's like, you know, and what if you could be excessively great at two things? And you might be for a little bit, but my experience tells me that over the long run, it's probably unrealistic to expect. Something's going to happen. And the allegory here says like Tiger Woods, look very hard at what happens if you're top of the world, destined to be like, you know, the greatest golfer ever, and you decide to party. That's what happens. This is not what happened, unfortunately, to Tiger Woods. That's what's going to happen to anybody that actually decides to party sooner or later. And that's it.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stoykov. Also, thank you to our audience. Please, if you like listening to us, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. and see you on the next one.
See you on the next one, Mr. Kirchev.